The day my grandson's wife looked me in the eye and said, "If you want to keep coming to this house, you'll need to start paying $3,500 rent every month." I honestly thought she was joking, but she wasn't smiling. She was serious, dead serious. And the most unbelievable part, the house she was standing in, the living room she was pointing at, the roof over her head, was the very house I had built with my own hands and gifted to them. For a moment, I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired. Because at 65 years old, you learn something about people. Sometimes the ones you sacrifice the most for are the first ones to forget everything you did. But what my grandson and his wife didn't realize that day was this: you should never try to turn a generous man into a fool. Because 3 weeks later, I came back to that same house. And this time, I didn't come alone. My name is Wilson. I'm 65 years old, and this is the story of how my own family tried to charge me rent in the house I gave them, and how that decision cost them everything. Welcome to my YouTube channel Moral Ecos, where silence speaks. Narrated by Wilson, 65 years old. My name is Wilson, and I'm 65 years old. Most of my life was spent working with my hands. I wasn't a rich man. I didn't wear suits or sit in offices. Instead, I built things: homes, schools, warehouses, entire neighborhoods. For 42 years, I worked as a construction foreman. Long days, early mornings, late nights. The kind of work that leaves your hands rough and your back aching. But every time I looked at the paycheck, I reminded myself why I was doing it. Family. Everything I built was for them. The grandson who meant everything. Out of everyone in my life, my grandson Daniel was the one closest to my heart. When he was little, he used to sit in my garage while I worked. He'd hold a tiny plastic hammer and copy everything I did. "Grandpa Wilson, look, I'm building too." I used to laugh and tell him, "Good builders don't just make houses, kid. They make homes." After my wife Martha passed away 8 years ago, Daniel was the one who kept visiting. He'd bring coffee. We'd sit quietly on the porch. Sometimes we didn't even talk. But his presence filled the silence Martha had left behind. That's why when Daniel got married 3 years ago, I wanted to give him something special. Something meaningful. Something that would help him start his life the right way. The house. On the edge of town stood a beautiful 2-story house. White wooden siding. A small front porch. Large maple tree in the yard. I had built that house 20 years earlier. Every board. Every nail. It was originally meant to be my retirement home with Martha. But after she died, the place felt too empty. So one evening I called Daniel. "Son," I said, "how would you like to own a house?" The silence on the phone lasted almost 10 seconds. Then he whispered, "Grandpa, you're kidding, right?" "No," I said softly. "You and Chloe deserve a good start." When I handed them the keys a week later, Daniel hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. But Chloe reacted differently. She smiled politely. But her eyes didn't show gratitude. They showed ownership. At the time, I ignored it. That was my first mistake. The slow chain. At first, things were good. Daniel invited me for dinner often. Chloe acted friendly. But slowly, things began to change. Every time I visited, Chloe seemed irritated. One evening, while I was fixing a kitchen cabinet, I overheard her whispering to Daniel, "Your grandfather shows up here too much." Daniel sounded uncomfortable. "He built this house for us." Chloe replied quietly but firmly. And now it's ours. That sentence sat heavy in my chest. But I told myself I was imagining things. Families go through phases. Or so I believed. The day everything broke. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I had brought groceries and a toolbox because Daniel mentioned the staircase railing was loose. When I knocked, Chloe opened the door. Her expression wasn't welcoming. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I came to fix the railing," I said calmly. She sighed and crossed her arms. "Before you keep coming here whenever you want, we need to talk." Something in her tone felt wrong. "What about?" I asked. Then she said it. "If you're going to keep visiting, you should start contributing financially." I blinked. Contributing. Yes. Then came the sentence I'll never forget. $3,500, rent every month should be fair. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. "Rent," I repeated slowly. "Yes," she said coldly. "This house costs money." My voice dropped to a whisper. "Chloe, I gave you this house." She shrugged. "That was 3 years ago." And just like that, decades of love and sacrifice meant nothing. The quiet exit. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I simply nodded. "All right," I said quietly. Then I turned around and walked out. Daniel never even came to the door. That silence hurt more than Chloe's words. The truth they did know. That evening I called my lawyer. After explaining everything, he asked one simple question. "Wilson, did you ever transfer the deed?" "No," I replied. There was a pause. Then he said, "Then legally, the house is still yours." That was the moment everything changed. 3 weeks later. 3 weeks passed. During that time, Chloe sent me a message. "Your rent payment is late." My lawyer smiled when he saw it. That message will help us a lot. Then the day came. I drove to the house. But I didn't go alone. A sheriff stood beside me. And my lawyer carried an eviction notice. When Chloe opened the door, her confidence vanished. "What is this?" My lawyer answered calmly. "Eviction notice." Her face turned pale. "You can't do that, this is our house." I finally spoke. "No, Chloe. This is my house." Daniel appeared behind her looking confused. "Grandpa, what's happening?" I looked at him sadly. "Your wife tried to charge me rent to visit the house I gave you." Daniel slowly turned toward Chloe. "Is that true?" She stayed silent. That silence said everything. The consequences. Within 30 days, they had to move out. Daniel visited me once during that time. He looked broken. "I didn't know she sent that message," he said. I believed him. But I told him something important. A man's character is tested by who he stands up to. He nodded and left. 1 year later. Life has a strange way of correcting itself. About a year later, Daniel showed up at my door again. He looked older, tired. "I filed for divorce," he said quietly. We sat on the porch together like we used to. The sunset painted the sky orange. Then he asked, "What are you going to do with the house?" I looked at him for a long moment. Then I pulled the keys from my pocket and placed them in his hand. But this time, I gave him one condition. "Burn it." His eyes filled with tears. And for the first time in years, I saw the boy who used to follow me around the garage with a toy hammer. Moral of the story: kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. The people who give the most out of love often stay silent when they are disrespected. But silence doesn't mean they are powerless. And sometimes the greatest lesson a family can learn is the value of gratitude, respect, and humility. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because every story here leaves behind a lesson.